All right, so getting right into it, man. Blackchild from Murder Inc. recently was on Cam Capone News, right? Shout out to Cam Capone, that's my guy.
Right.
And he had mentioned Proof got jumped in Miami by Murder Inc. And this is the reason why Blackchild to this day doesn't go to Detroit, because he said he put in work. Now, were you surprised when he had brought this up after so many years and with Proof, had been gone and stuff like that?
Well, I mean, honestly, it shows. I'm gonna make a blanket statement, but it shows his character because a discreet man knows how to hold his tongue. And with that being said, part of it's a big kernel of truth in what he was saying, but it was a two-way street because yeah, Proof was down there vacationing, and yeah, he didn't have his security. Proof was just down there dolo, by himself. And stuff happened, but Proof got alerted to the cause and he got out of there. And he did, he got out of there, and ironically, it happened in Florida. He alerted us on what was happening. He got to another city in Florida and he flew back out. His vacation ended very quickly. And ironically, on their side, it happened up here. The A-list guys or the Chris Gottis and all of them, they know that when they came up here, they had to get their ass out of here, and that's all of this is common facts, is all street legend. So when he's saying, different stuff like that, it's like, okay, it's okay, and what? It's that's what I think about it. It wasn't nothing biggie. And we sign up for this. We sign up for this. We sign up for this. It's a part of the rules of the game. That's almost like when a policeman, he every day he goes to work, he says a prayer, he know it's some shit that's gonna happen. He may have a day when he be a policeman, you know, where something doesn't happen. But in hip hop, and you always gotta expect that. And if you're around the gang and you in the industry, it's not gonna be, some stuff is going to, happen,
Right. I saw this little interview that Proof had did with allhiphop.com, and it said that this happened on May 3rd, 2003, the actual event. And Proof was with like two other guys, and I guess it was like 12 or 14 people against them three. And he said Irv was there though, and he said it's like, he didn't really get seriously hurt. He just got like a couple cuts, a little bruise, but he said it's on and popping.
Yeah, but it was, man, that was so like the norm back in them days. That was almost like, everybody got out. Well, I can't say everybody got out with, unscathed, just in that whole war. But man, it was just part of the game. That's like, if you around the game, that stuff happens, and yeah, it could have ended bad, but it could have ended bad on both parts. But it's not like, up here in Detroit, they know we not no hoes. You know what I mean? They know we
Absolutely.
not, and so, well, it's crazy that he would keep bringing that stuff up after 20 odd years, because it's like it should be more to his career or whatever.
Well, I think to be fair, it was because he was getting interviewed about the whole 50 Cent beef, the G Unit situation, you know what I mean, on the plane with Ja Rule and everything like that. And then this got brought up, like how it stemmed from and everything. But I hear you. I don't think that this detail was needed to be thrown in there because, with Proof being gone and everything. But yeah, that's unfortunate, man.
Yeah, and I get it. Let's be real,
Yeah.
with Uncle Murder and Tony Yayo and Ja Rule having that incident, it's hyperbole,
Right.
Everybody's trying to like sell more of the sizzle, but it's cool. I wish him success, and I wish he, get a couple more hits so he can have more more to talk about.
So Proof had responded on a song off the I Miss the Hip Hop Shop album, right? on the song Jaw in a Brawl. And he basically said Chris Gotti got him set up, and when he see Chris and Blackchild, it's on. So like Proof himself like put it out there, you know.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah, it was.
do you remember like your reaction like when you got the call and everything like that from Proof, or you found out what happened?
Well, man, when it's an old saying, when a snake is in the house, you don't have time to conversate. And so we were on real time of getting the information and being, hey, I'm here. We figured out a way to get him out of there. And then Proof, like, got out of that situation. He did get out of there. And then he got a ride with he may have been with one other person, that because he was vacationing. Sometimes Proof being a leader and being like one of the, like he's technically was the mayor of Detroit, he has to get away. He would get away
Mm-hmm.
to Arizona, he would get away to Florida, you know, and so he would just like he needed some downtime. So he found the way to get, I want to believe we got him out of there, out of like, I can't remember the city, but he got there, we made it where, he got on a plane. True enough, he may have lost some clothes or something at the hotel. I don't believe he even went to the hotel. We just got him out of there. But it wasn't like no like loss or something. I believe it was like the first day he was there. So it wasn't like it wasn't no crazy stuff. We didn't have no show. We didn't have nothing going on. He was just like, he was just there.
Do you remember like M's reaction to the whole situation?
It was, man, comes with the territory. No, he wasn't
Got you.
overreacting. It comes to the territory. It was because you gotta remember, man, that at that time we were so experienced, just not having success, but in hip hop, because hip hop is a combative. It is a combative sport sometimes. So even with rap battles, different things, and so man, we were like on our shit. That was in '03, you said. So man, all of us was like inoculated in hip hop during the '80s. All of us like are in the same age bracket. So you thinking, man, and we've been dealing with hip hop for at that point like 14, 15 years.
Right.
So that, it just comes with it. I'm not trying to sound vague, but it comes with the territory. Now, when I was in music business school, I learned about, because that my last interview, we don't have, they go watch that one, get PANDA some more money, get them some more ads. But when I was in music business school, yeah, you follow the fundamental about the music business, about publishing, copyrights, how to promote a record, what you can do, what you can't do, how to bend the rules. But when you get in the game, and especially in hip hop, it's a certain element you got to adjust yourself. So all of that just came with the territory.
Yeah, because I was wondering if, that situation inspired M later on to write what he did in Like Toy Soldiers, and, where he said, me and Dre try to stop the 50 and Jaw beef from happening. You know what I'm saying? And then you see in the music video, obviously, what happens to Proof in the music video.
Yeah, that's just like that's just life. Ironic, like Alanis Morissette song. It was just an ironic. Um, it was just an ironic situation. But I will tell you, Proof and Eminem, just being around them, and like I said, they're very reflective, and they're thinkers. I mean, these guys are really, really thinkers. You see what the camera, when they're in front of a camera, you may be like, oh, they're funny guys or they do this, but they are like some of the smartest men that I've had the honor of, getting to know and call friends. And I think M do a lot of reflection and a lot of stuff that he do, even in my life now. As I got older, I get it. Like M would always sit away and be a thinker, but myself back then, I was like, I had the party house. I was always single, or I had, I was in and out of relationships, and everything was coming at me like all the time in real time. But I always noticed M was really like a thinker on stuff. So some of those songs and some of those hit records he made, he would be reflecting. He would sit away and, and it would be a very, he would just come up with concepts. And of course, the world knows he's a studio rat. So he's always in the studio constantly. And, by the power of God, he made enough in his life to have his own studio. So he always had time to, to make music. So a lot of that comes out of it.
Right, for sure, man. What was your reaction when you heard the song Jaw on a Bra?
John abroad. What's
Yeah,
that?
the song that Proof responded to Murder Inc on
Oh,
I Miss.
that song, man. They were gonna they were gonna do what they were gonna do. Proof, it was just wanting to once again, we set up Proof gladly, where Proof had his own freedom. He had his own label. He had it. Proof had a lot of outward, he could express himself because, we had set him up, and it just wasn't me. It was like, it was a team of us, where we gave Proof like his freedom, and he could write stuff, he could drop mixtapes, he could do this. And so and that's one thing with an artist. An artist wants his freedom, so he was free to express himself. Proof had a couple of studios, and he could like bang out something. So when he got home, he could do that.
For sure, man.
But once again, though, I think the question you're asking me, we was always prepared, like for stuff, so you know, that was just one incident. But Proof knew, like, you know, he knows if it's an action, you're gonna get a reaction. So he knew what he was doing.
What was the whole aura like in Detroit during that time when Shady G Unit Aftermath was beefing with Murder Inc and Benzino and the Source and stuff like that? Like, what was that time period like in the city?
It was amazing. It was, I mean, honestly, um, at that time, we didn't have like a lot of like now it's 50 artists that's popping in Detroit. I know that sounds crazy, but when you really count like the artists, even the artists, even the singers. So at that time, we were a niche. We were like, it was a niche. Of course, you had like some of the major players like Rock Bottom, Street Lords, Cheddar Boys. But at that time, we was the ones that was major. And man, it all was that phone call where this is really answer your question. It was that phone call where M and Paul, they went out to the to Wendy's Day event, and they, and just stuff just happened, miracles. So we start getting word like, hey, M is in the studio with Dr. Dre. Everybody was like, what? And after that rumor, and it spread through our crew, like the D12 and the affiliates, because at the time, Rico Shelton, my former partner in management, he had an independent label where he had, you know, he had Bazaar, and he had the Nine and Conniva, and he also, and I was managing Proof. So that little inner little niche circuit we had, we started hearing like, "It was in the studio with Dr. Dre, and Interscope is gonna sign him." After that buzz, man, I call it the Eminem explosion. And once again, you had some of the greats, some of the pantheon of people behind the scenes. Like, you had Paul Rosenberg, who was managing M, and he was out there like, Paul, I've always considered like that's one of my big bros who's like a Jerry Maguire, like that movie. And it was like a symphony. And with all that happening, we was having so much success. We were really having big success. But then in hip hop, that's when the thunder come in. Cause you gotta remember, right? It was at that point, it was Ja Rule and Jay-Z. They were like the kings, and you had the Southern guys too. You had the Cash Money, and you had the No Limit, and everybody was just like it was almost like, all due respect on a marketing tip, some of their buzz was winding down. And then here come this Haley's Comet of Eminem coming in, and it just exploded. It was like, and it was like it was like the rebirth of Dr. Dre, because Dr. Dre hadn't had a really he had the Chronic in early '90s, and then he had the After, and then he broke up with a Death Row, and then he did the Aftermath compilation. That was like, it was good, but it was like, but then when he came and recreated himself with 2001 album and it just it just shapeshift the whole industry. And I was in the music business because I had a marketing company I had a really successful marketing company. So I was like two for one. I was like managing Proof, and then I also had my marketing company. So I mean, I kind of didn't. I had a jaundiced eye. I had more of an experience of eye of what was going on and what my counterparts, from all over the world, because I got counterparts in the promo game all over the world, and they were like, "Man, y'all guys are the new era," and that's what it was. And dude, hating started coming out. And then you got to remember, we only had like, back in them days, we had magazines, periodicals, and we had TV. And so we would get the information, because some of those magazines, it took them 2 months to come out. Pause. And so we would get it on like maybe an AOL chat, like, man, this guy talking shit about you. You're like, what? He talking shit? And then it would take us like a day or two to confirm. And the internet was very new then. We didn't have iPhone, we didn't have social media. I guess AOL and MSN Messenger was our social media. So we would get it in real time. I mean, we would get it in slow time. It wasn't real time how it is now. Like if Young Thug say, "Hey, I want to beef with Drake today," that kid can get hot in 2 hours. Now back then it would take like, wait a minute, Young Thug said it about Drake. Wait, we gotta confirm that. And then the magazines would take like a month later to come out with an article on that. So it was all like slow. And then mixtapes came out. So it was all about it was about communication, getting your message across. And back then, like, the mixtapes brothers, they came in, and it was a way to relay messages and news about how people felt about you. So it took us, we were on like delay, but we knew what was going on. We was very When you're a part of the game, you know what's happening.
But was the vibe in the city really tense at that time though? Like for Ja Rule and Benzino and Murder Inc?
No, because they wouldn't bring their ass to the city. They would they would not, because Detroit is a whole nother, Detroit is a whole nother area. That's a whole, yeah, they could talk shit online, and they may try, but no, they wouldn't come here. They may have tried, Benzino tried to come here, but a lot of that stuff was staged.
Got you. Because I think that one of the biggest things that stand out from that beef, right, was when Ja Rule really crossed the line, in my opinion. And even Blackchild said that he crossed the line too. So to Blackchild's credit, he even said that Ja Rule went too far with what he said about Haley and what he said about Kim and stuff like that, because like you brought it into another territory now with what you're saying. You remember what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, but that all goes back to, okay, I get that, but let's not look at the trees, let's look at the forest. When I talk about the Eminem explosion, that is probably that is a big part of it, because that came Eminem. I mean, 50 Cent was next into the whole Eminem explosion. So I don't know if you remember this one, but you remember Jay-Z told Rockefeller, like, yo, they coming for us. That 50, they're coming for us. And I just want y'all to know. And so when 50 came out, and then 50, like, he did the you know, wankster, and he was like really going at. It's almost like it ain't no fun when the rabbit got the gun. So you got to remember that he came with this whole, you know, it was like 50 came and he was really sitting on the whole Murder Inc. thing. And I'm not trying to be, with this interview, I'm trying to be not biased. But if you look at it from just a regular fan, because I am a regular fan. I've been in the game all this time, but I love hip hop. And hey, I will, like, if I'm on a date and I want to go buy a CD, I buy a CD, back then. But so as a fan of hip hop, man, 50 was murdering on the whole Murder Inc. And it's all been, it's all been verified that it was looking bad. The album sales were not doing good. I mean, there was a lot of stuff going on. And it wasn't a marketing strategy, it just was happening. 50 had the freedom because he did a nice deal, with Paul and Theo Settlemeyer, and he had a nice deal. And it's all the stuff I'm saying, it's all documented. And 50 had freedom where he had G Unit Records. He could still put out mixtapes. And man, he was getting, so Ja Rule had to strike missiles out. He had to do something. And that was totally wrong what he did. But and I could see from his point of view, he had to do something because he was sitting like platinum on platinum. He was MTV's darling. He was BET's darling. And then for this 50 to come out of the clear blue sky and just like whoop, just take his energy, that was deep, man.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because Ja Rule and M were cool prior to that, right? And 50 himself has said that before that, they were cool before that. But I guess Ja Rule took it personal, like, hey, you putting this guy on who I got problems with, so now I got an issue with you as a result.
But I don't know how cool they were. I don't, how cool do you think they were in your opinion?
Well, 50 said that, they hung out one time and they were talking about doing songs together or something like that. I don't know, but
I don't know. I mean, one thing, M is a respecter of. He's a respect. That ain't even a word. He is he appreciates and he is in love with the hip hop culture. And I believe the hip hop culture, you could be green, purple. I don't believe in I don't believe in appropriating or whoever. I don't, I have a different. That's a whole nother topic. But so M always appreciates artist. So he probably did yeah, he did appreciate because I never M was not that type of guy who was like a hater. He appreciated art. So if it was one art, and that's what people are like, oh man, M like that. You'll see even in, you'll look, it's on YouTube where M got all these, he collects cassette tapes and he has all these tapes and, you'll be like, oh, he was like 783 or he like Antoinette. I know I'm older than you, that's where my age kicking in. And M really appreciated even acts where you would think that was whack. He fuck with them, you know?
mhm.
And so, yeah, I could see that, but yeah, it wasn't like he went in there like, oh, I hate guys and all of that. And you know,
You know what? One thing that I really appreciate about M is that he understands that without the people that came prior to him, like you can say now from a technical standpoint, his skill level is better than a lot of people that came before him, right? But his skill level wouldn't exist or be where it's at today without the people that came before him. It's like like when you compare Dr. J to LeBron now, the dunk or whatever, right? Like it was so impactful during that time period, and that had to exist at that time in order for LeBron to get to where he is. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like M really appreciates that and he acknowledges that.
yeah, I
When
mean,
a lot of people don't, though. They'd be like, oh, that's that old shit, and dismiss it.
well, all of us are, it's not like we're like 10 years above each other, but it's almost the old. It's almost that I think it's an African saying that the youth can't teach the elders about tradition. And to that point, M has always respected everybody from, you know, you know, like everybody, like the the jazzies and the 70s, Brucey B's, Brucey, and I'm like messing up their names, but he respected that. Even when Proof, the whole stage show setting and is Naughty by Nature. The when you see how like the whole interaction of the early Eminem shows, a lot of that came from Naughty by Nature had one of the best shows. They still have one of the best shows ever. We really and now you could probably see it on YouTube now, but the way Vin Rock and Tretch and just and even I mean in KG with DJ, that is like you could freeze that and that would be like hip hop. That would be a hip hop show. And I was so glad, even during Proof funeral, Naughty by Nature came because they knew they came to the funeral. And I was like sitting there, and of course I was mourning, but I see, oh man, that would because those guys and they came before, Naughty by Nature came like 8 years before the whole Eminem explosion, and you gotta pay respects to it. So it's the tradition thing. And always respect, like the Grandmaster Caz and the Furious Five and all of that. Like you said, their cadence, does M share their cadence? It's just in my opinion. No, he don't, but he knows where they were going with it. And it's all about hip hop is like a gumbo. Panda, you bring in the beans. I'm bringing the fried chicken. You know what I mean? I'm bring. We all bringing something to the table, and I love how, I love how hip hop, and that's our culture. We all bring something to the table to make it better.
For sure, man.